as a child for me was a little different than most people my age. We didn't have the material things that most people had. We didn't have the brand name things, but we did have love in our home. I remember my mom always working 2 to 3 jobs for as long as I can remember. But she made sure we had breakfast before school. She came home, she cooked supper, and would go to work again. My dad was an alcoholic, so in that it caused, some problems. However, we still knew right from wrong. Dad couldn't keep a job, sometimes would change from one job to the other. Again, Mom would still, support our family the best that she could. I remember many days that Mama would heat water on top of the stove or the wood-burning heater just so we could have a hot bath. She would carry scalding hot water down the hallway. We would put a water hose through the window just to have cold water. But yet no one at school knew what was going on because we were taught to be content and happy with what you have. We would pray before we would eat. Our family knew of God, we talked about God, but my dad never went to church. My mom would go, but it was just occasionally. But my grandmother, the one that I called Nanny, was the one that made sure we all went to church. She always cared all the grandchildren, and she always made sure that we knew everything we needed to know about the Bible. It was because of my grandmother that it really drew me closer to God. So my grandmother would pick us up and we would go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, always at church. Very involved. On Saturdays, we'd go to visitation or have church cleaning. I loved church because I was the type person who always wanted to be in control, though. I was also always looking for affection, love. My mom loved us, but I just felt like I was needing more attention. Because of the problems at our home, I would move. I moved out, would move in with my grandmother, back and forth home so many times. I even moved in with my aunt once. Moving back and forth because I would escape the situation if I couldn't fix it. Always looking for a way to fix a problem. When I was a teenager, or maybe around 10 or 11, I went to the altar like I always did at every service and bowed and prayed because that's what everyone was doing. The preacher came down and said, "Are you saved?" And I said, "I pray all the time to God and He takes care of me." He said, "Are you saved?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, I'm going to show you a scripture and I want you to repeat this prayer after me, word for word, and you'll be saved." So I repeated this prayer word for word, got up and told the church I'm saved, and then I got baptized. Well, little did I know later in life I was not saved, but I thought I was. So I kept on living the same way. Nothing changed. I still went to church, everything was still exactly the same. So I kept going to church and I played the piano, started playing piano at the age of 5, but I would sing and just kept living life normal. When I got to be 15 years old, I went to work for my uncle down at his mechanic shop, my first real job, to make money to buy my first vehicle. Pontiac Sunbird, old vehicle, but it was mine. While working at the shop, I met the guy that I'm married to now, Gene. He was older than me, so my family wasn't very fond of me seeing him. I've always pretty much wanted to date older guys, and I guess again that comes to that affection and attention that I was still looking for. So we worked together there and got to know each other more and started dating. So Gene and I got married at the age when I was 18 years old. A lot of the families said we wouldn't be able to stay married for a year. We had nothing in common. And although I knew that I loved him, at the time I really didn't understand why I was marrying him, because we had nothing in common. I now know that that was part of God's plan. After we got married, first year or two went really, really good. Then it got really, really rocky. Got rocky, I was out of church. I would contact my nanny and say, "Nanny, I don't understand why my marriage is falling apart. I'm doing everything I can." She said, "Angel, you do know why. You're not serving God, and you need to get in church, and you need to turn your family over to God, and your marriage will be fine." She said, "But you're trying to control it instead of letting God control it." I said, "Okay." So we got in church, and that's when our life began to change. So we got in church, still trying to live what I thought was a good life. Going to church every service, got involved, trying to teach Sunday school, trying to be the youth director, everything that I could be. We about lost my oldest son when he was 3 or 4 years old to an asthma attack. My husband's always worked out of town, so I was at home with him. They said 30 seconds later he would have been dead. So, by God's grace, he survived. Later in life, I had other issues. I had nodules to grow on my vocal cords. I had to have surgery and have them removed, and was told not to ever sing. And I just started singing for the Lord. But then I prayed and asked God, "Lord, if you would give me my voice back, I'll use it for you." Had surgery, wasn't supposed to sing again, and couldn't talk for 6 weeks. But within 1 week, by the grace of God, I was singing in front of a pulpit and in front of a church. Continued to go to church, but still, I was still missing something. Went to church, and I had my youngest son. They said I would never carry him past 4 months. No way. A lot of female issues. Wound up carrying him full term. I know what God can do. But our preacher was preaching one day in the month of February about love, about that agape love, that God's love, and the family love. This is something that all growing up, I wanted that attention. And now I'm like, I can get that attention, but you know what? If I had God's true love inside me, instead of me getting it, I can give it. And I went up to the altar, and I told the preacher, I said, "I'm not saved." And he said, "But you said you're saved." I said, "I think the devil's been tricking me all this time." But I got down, and when I came up, at that moment, I knew I was saved, and I was a different person. When my oldest son started school, I wanted him to be in a really good school system. The area where we lived wasn't what I thought was the best school system. After working for the Postal Service for 6 years, I was offered a job as a teacher assistant for DeSoto County Schools. I immediately said, "There's no way I am going to be a teacher assistant and work in the schools. I do not like school." But God's plans were different. Needless to say, I did start working there. After my first year of being an assistant, the principal and the teacher kept saying that I needed to become a teacher. They watched me and they said that I had teacher material, and I was like, I'm not going to be a teacher. Again, God's plans were different. After being an assistant for several years, I decided to go back to school. My husband was driving over the road. I was staying at home, raising the boys, working as an assistant full-time. Then I started Blue Mountain Christian College full-time as well. So as I'm working and going to college, I graduated Blue Mountain Christian College with a 3.8 GPA. Very, very pleased with that, because it was only by God's grace that I even made it through, much less with such a good GPA, knowing that my family wasn't at the top of the line with education. Once I finished school, at that current time, there were no teaching positions available. The principal said to me, Angie, you need to get your special ed endorsements. I've seen you with the special students. Again, I denied it and said I would not do that. But at the time, my husband had lost his job, and I needed a job. And I know that was part of God's plan. Needless to say, I went and took the SPED praxis, passed it with higher grades than I did with the general ed. But at that point, I was still kind of nervous about teaching special ed classes. I was told about a job opening at Oak Grove and Hernando. I called the principal, and once I got there, I realized that it was Mr. Darnell, my math teacher at Independence School. I told him I wanted to apply for the special ed job, and he said there wasn't one, but to come back the next day and he would interview me anyway in case there was another job. I went the next morning and he said, "Angela, you're a godsend. They called me this morning and I have a self-contained SPED class that will start this year, and it's been 8 years since this school has had a self-contained SPED class. This is where God wants you to be." He put me in a classroom with 4 walls and he said, "I can't help you. I don't have the materials, but let me know what you need." I went from there. I fell in love with the students. My first year was horrible on my part. I learned so much from the kids. I was bruised, pulled hair, spit, cussed, things you would never imagine. But I loved those kids. And at this point, now that I was saved, I could share my love with them. And I was trying to be all that they needed. And again, I saw so much improvements for those kids. But I still wondered, why was I going through this path of teaching special needs kids? But I knew at that point it was my calling. After my 4th year of teaching special need kids, there was a tragic accident that happened. On October the 11th of 2014, I was awakened by the sounds of dogs barking. I was home alone. I immediately jumped up and looked out my bedroom window and saw blue lights flashing in my yard. I ran to the front door saying, please stop," flashing off and on my front porch light. The police officer stopped and got out of his car and said, "Ma'am, are you Angela Birmingham?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "There's a Richard Birmingham that has wrecked a Jeep that's in your name." I said, "Where's my son?" And he said, "He is headed to Olive Branch Medical Hospital, and you need to get there as soon as possible." And I said, "Is my son alive?" And he said, "Ma'am, I cannot give you any information." I immediately started crying and shouting and just praying and asking God, "God, please, if you're going to take my son, let me at least say goodbye." I called my husband and said, "I'm on the way to the hospital. Scooter's been in a wreck and he may not live." He said, "Angie, he's going to be okay. God's going to take care of him. I'll meet you there. I'm 3 hours away, but I'll get there as soon as I can." And when I walked in and saw my son hooked to every tube, every wire, and he had tears running down his face, I was crying out to God, and I prayed out loud right there beside him with doctors and all, didn't care who heard me. And I said, "God, please spare my son's life. God, let us live for you. God, I want you to get the glory from his healing, and I claim all your promises right now. And I'm thanking you, God, right now for breathing into my son and healing him and touching his body. And I'm claiming everything and thanking you for what you're going to do right now." So the doctor at the hospital told me the outcome didn't look well and that my son was on life support. They had to get him to the med as soon as possible. Due to the storm and rain, the helicopter was not allowed to land, so that's why he had to be transferred by ambulance. He was transferred to the med, which is Regional 1 in Memphis, Tennessee. Once we got there, we had to wait for hours while they done lots and lots of tests. Once we were called back with all the results, they immediately told me that our son had severe traumatic brain injury, hematomas on both sides of the brain, bleeding on the inside, the complete brain was swollen, lacerations all around the side of his brain. He also had broken eye socket, cheekbone, ribs, right leg, and ankle. The right lung was also damaged at the time. Scooter was not breathing any at all. They had done tests and said there was no brain activity. They told us at that point that our son, it didn't look like he was going to make it for 24 hours, and we were to call the family in. So we stayed beside him, and I never wanted to leave him. But at this point, I was not allowed to touch my son. I was not allowed to talk to him. They put a bolt on his brain to measure the pressure. Very, extremely dangerous. And it's hard to watch your son that's 18 years old lay there and you can't talk or touch. But I slightly would still, just barely, just touch his bed, and I would pray and ask God, please, Lord, let my son live, God. Just give him back, let him live a normal life. I immediately, during that time, just had a peace from God that my son was going to walk and talk again, no matter what they said. They wanted us to pull him off of life support after 3 days and said, Miss Birmingham, he's not going to be anything more than a vegetable if he ever opens his eyes. He was on life support for 21 days. I refused. It was also that many days before he even opened his eyes to even look at us. He was in that vegetative state for a while. He was even in a coma for a year, but I knew my son was going to be okay. After 4 months in the med, we transferred to the Shepherd Center for 2 months. Came home for 10 months, and during that time, he emerged to consciousness. And after he emerged from consciousness, we went back to the Shepherd Center. And we stayed there to help him make more progress. And although my son is still nonverbal, he is totally conscious. He answers yes and no. He can tell you the year he was born, how old he is, and he can answer any questions. He can even read. He can't talk, but he can read. He also can text by a finger. There's so much he can do, but people just don't understand. He's still there. He's just trapped in his body. I still feel to this day that my son will be a walking, talking miracle. I never will forget when we were in the ICU at the bed, we were trying to explain to my youngest son, your brother might be like this for the rest of his life. He said, Mama, God's already talked to me. Scooter's going to be okay, Mama. And once I saw that my child had more faith than me, I thought I needed to step it up. And from that point, I've claimed victory ever since. This has not been an easy road, people. It is still hard to this day. There's so many things that I'm having to do I never in my life thought I would have to do. But thank God for His grace and sending so many people we don't know. Although we've lost a lot of family, we've lost a lot of friends during this trial, or during this journey, I guess we would say. We've lost many, but we've gained more. And I'm so thankful for that. There's no way we can make it without the prayers and the support, because that's how God works. And He's done everything for us. You know, we've lost lots of income. We pay out more than we bring in. You know, Scooter's health has been up and down. There's just so much that I could go about that no way we could make it or he make it. But we have made it. And it's only by the grace of God that we've made it this far. Again, He is going to talk. He is going to walk. And one day, it will be my son sharing his testimony before the world. Looking back over my life, I thank God for everything that I've gone through. Even the years of teaching special needs and wondered why I was doing that, I now know it was part of God's plan. I would never choose this journey if I wasn't able to choose it. I would like to say that this journey has brought me closer to God than I've ever been in my life. And I would like to encourage anybody, no matter where you come from in life, you can break that cycle and you can still come closer to God. Sometimes God's plans is not our plans. Sometimes our plans are not God's plans. But I'm Angela Birmingham, and His grace is enough.